From Mamma Mia, welcome to The Spill, your daily pop culture fix. I'm Laura Brodnick.
And I'm Ksenia Lukic.
And coming up on the show today, we had the Golden Bachelor finale last night, so we're going to talk about the significance of that, along with the fallout. And Kim Kardashian and Meghan Markle had a bit of an issue with some photos being deleted last week. There's more information about that today that we're going to get into, but first...
we have SNL. Glen Powell hosted SNL this week. And people are pretty excited about it. He did a really good job.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to sort of say with SNL, like, how big of a success it was or, like, they tanked. Or I haven't seen the skits go viral. What people are really talking about is that opening monologue and how he kind of lent back. Even though he's, like, quite a big movie star, blockbuster star now, he consistently leans back into this idea of being kind of like the kind of guy who's trying to make it in Hollywood and
relatable.
Setbacks. Yeah, he's trying to make himself the relatable guy, which is normally why he has his parents walk a red carpet with him and hold up signs saying, like, why do people care about Glen Powell and all that sort of stuff. Even though he is Tom Cruise's chosen protege, he went through the Tom Cruise film school, and Tom Cruise now comes to every one of his premieres to hype him up and has allegedly given him lessons in how to hold up his popcorn for photos, because that is Tom Cruise's shtick, that he's an old school movie star who loves popcorn, so he is moulding Glenn in his image.
I feel like we maybe needed a popcorn lesson last week. I feel like we watched Wicked last week, and I feel like both of us were just, I'm a hand to mouth with popcorn at a cinema. I'm just like, it just goes one after another.
See, I like to do one little kernel at a time. I know it takes hours, but you've got 2 hours to get through that popcorn. Plus, if any popcorn goes down into these boobs, it's gone forever. So I need to be across every little piece.
I'm
where
a shoveler. Like,
okay.
It's like
chic.
No, very chic. Like, do not put that's why the lights need to be off, because I'm like shoving that into my face.
Well, yeah, that's why I wait for Cover of Darkness in the movie for that to happen.
Yeah.
So
sorry,
I don't think
track.
That's important. How you eat popcorn in a movie, I think, tells you a lot about someone.
Yeah.
That's
Yes,
what we should be asking on first dates. So Tom Cruise wouldn't approve of us, I think, is what we're taking away from that. So Glen Powell's monologue was very much about how he had been supposed to host SNL 4 years earlier, and he made it out that he had sort of been, cancelled, or they changed the plan on him or something like that. But what it came out was that he was supposed to host it in line with Top Gun Maverick coming out, which was his big break into movie stardom. And then because that movie got pushed back because of the pandemic and wanting to sort of have a crowd be able to go to the theatre and see it, he said that Lorne Michaels, who's the creator of SNL, called him personally and said, we're going to have to pull you. And apparently he was like, no, I'll still do it, like, because he really wanted to do it. And Lorne is just like, I think, want the few people in Hollywood who can just say whatever he wants to anyone. And he just said, look, if the movie's not out, no one's going to know who you are. So it's a waste of time.
I believe there was a choice profanity in there too.
Yeah. No one's
according to Glenn, no one is going to know who the fuck you are. So this whole monologue, I did think it was quite sweet, because it was basically based on this whole history of him not getting to host this SNL.
Of him being the underdog.
Yeah. So he talks about how when he found out the first time 4 years ago, he and his family were out in the front porch and a UPS driver came to deliver a package. And they were all jumping up and down, really excited. But the UPS driver goes, oh, what's going on? And Glen Powell's screaming, oh, my God, I get to host SNL. And they took a selfie. They show the selfie. He brings the UPS driver to the SNL show that he's actually hosting to prove that he's not a liar. Yeah. And this poor UPS driver looks so nervous. I think Elliot was his name, I believe. He goes up on stage with Glen Powell, and he's kind of awkwardly standing there, like, throwing up peace signs. It was actually quite sweet.
It was a really good touch. And again, with that whole, like, nice guy everyman, which I'm sure Glen Powell is. I haven't heard anything to the contrary, but that was very much his kind of shtick for the night. I always find it so interesting with the Lorne Michaels thing of how, like, because he would have approved all those different jokes. And I wonder if, like, there's stuff that Glen Powell would have said if he hadn't sort of had to run it all through Lorne Michaels, because he's, like, the one power player in Hollywood that everyone, like, every celebrity is is so kind of like they revere him. It's this kind of like cachet of who can say how close they are to Lorne Michaels. Like some people have his phone number and they throw that into conversations. Some people have sort of like a side friendship with him. It's like the ultimate stamp of kind of coolness in Hollywood and how like powerful you are in the industry to have that relationship with Lorne. Even Ariana Grande the other day.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah, Ariana Grande the other day was doing an interview with Bowen Yang and they were talking about how when Bowen got cast in Wicked, Lorne Michaels was like, no, you can't do that because Saturday Night Live is obviously like a full-on production schedule through the week. And so Ariana Grande, in like the biggest flex of her career, so that she called Lorne Michaels personally. And then she started doing his voice.
This is the best thing. So the fact that she can get away with making fun of Lorne Michaels. And it's quite funny because obviously Lorne Michaels is the boss of SNL, which is all impressions. People are making fun of everybody. But the consistent stories that come out about Lorne is that he's terrifying. I'm scared. I would be so scared for him as my boss. He's clearly very demanding and he will tell you if something isn't funny. But Ariana Grande is sitting there doing this like spot on impression with Bowen Yang. And she was like, oh, I can't do it. But it's a really great
specific thing. So she's doing Lorne's voice and she's saying that she called him and how like nice she was being and flattering she was being. And he was like, well, I know why you want Bowen because he's the most popular person on SNL. And they ended up working something out. But the interesting thing is halfway through her impression of him, she stops and goes to Bowen Yang, oh, is it okay that I'm doing that? And he's like, yeah, it's fine. Because Bowen Yang would know that Lorne likes people to impersonate him if he likes them. That's why Pete Davidson does it a lot because Lorne Michaels is obsessed with just like the concept of Pete Davidson, and that's why he's like produced all these shows where Pete Davidson plays himself and is his own person. But yeah, it's this kind of like interesting thing of like who's in a real power position.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say that Glenn was pretty devastated when he couldn't do it, and you could see that the fact that he did get to do it now 4 years later, it was like a dream come true. He really looked very, very happy in all the sketches. So most of the sketches for this particular week were all based on like the Epstein files because that was like obviously the big piece of political news this week. And so a lot of them were like that. And, you know, there's a lot of political commentary. There was a couple of really funny things. But through the whole show and all the sketches that I saw, it was just Glen Powell being like a very excited theatre kid getting to like play with friends. So I did actually think it was quite sweet. It made me like Glen Powell a lot more.
Oh, well, there you go. That poor rich white man, he's finally got his break that he's been waiting for this whole time.
So the Golden Bachelor finale was last night and we have our winner. It's Sunny and Bear. And there's been a little bit of chat on the back end. So obviously this was filmed like 7 months ago. It has been revealed that Sunny and Bear are still together, which is really nice. But I feel like we should talk about the finale itself and then we can talk about some of the other offshoots of commentary that have happened since it aired last night. So first of all, can we talk about how windy it was on that rock?
It's just so interesting how like The Bachelor, like they do make everything look so sweeping and romantic. And I love how they've gone back to that old school thing of like these big flashy finales with like the same production value as like a small Netflix movie in terms of making, because, you know, that's what they used to do back in the day. And then as for the last season before they rebooted it, as budgets got smaller and audience got smaller, it kind of like the finales got smaller and smaller until they were basically filming next to a paddling pool with like an iPhone. And so this one was in South Africa, so we had them jet over there and they had these kind of like their final dates were really luxe with all the animals and everything. It made me want to go on the Golden Bachelor just to kind of go and swim with penguins or go on a safari.
You're
or something
too young
like
to
that.
be on the Golden Bachelor, Laura.
Maybe one day I'll go. That's the only way I'm going to swim with penguins. It's so expensive to go there.
You swam with manta rays. You don't need to have penguins too.
That's why I need to add penguins to the list. So you have these like crazy dates, and this is when you can sort of almost start to tell with the classic Bachelor finale of who he's going to pick, because watching it, I felt like he was leaning towards Jeanette. That was more of the way he was going, and it's, I guess, because that's what they choose to show. Like we've had past bachelorettes and things sort of say, like Maddie J always says that it was Laura from the beginning, but we didn't always see clips of that, so that there's some mystery. Georgia Love always said that you could tell it was Lee from the second that he walked into the room, but they chose chose not to show a lot of that so that people were still in the final stages, like who is it going to be? Which I guess they've got to take the mystery out of it. But if you're really in love with someone, it's hard to hide. So going into the finale, I wasn't sure who was going to pick.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people in Australia were the same because there was a lot of very surprised people when Sunny did win. And Jeanette also looked really gutted, and she said in interviews since that she was expecting to win. When she opened that door, she was expecting to win. And then she says that when she walked up to him, she saw it in his eyes and she knew as soon as she saw it in his eyes.
And also, she'd been through so much, just as you were saying before, getting up onto that damn rock. I know once they added the music and the overlay and everything, but I was like, you've really put this woman through the ringer.
And then her, like, the poor thing has been heartbroken. And she said this, and I want to read this quote out because I think it's so common, this sort of response when you get your heart broken. I just wanted to run from that because I held back my tears. I put my wall up and I thought, just be strong. And I just wanted to get off that mountain, rip my clothes off, rip my shoes off, and just rid myself of that day. You know, I wanted to go somewhere and have my little cry.
Oh, 100%. Again, because there's this whole thing where they like to get them more emotional. There's all these tricks they do on reality shows. Like, I'm not sure how much they did on this particular episode, but we know that like in the past, like producers have come out and contestants have said about like things like having to wait for huge amounts of time to kind of get you more like emotionally upset so that you have a bigger reaction on camera. You have your producer who looks after you through the whole show and they're telling you a certain something, but at the end of the day, they still answer to the network, so they can only tell you so much. And then this whole thing of like the rigmarole of getting dressed up and saying like, if he chooses you, like this was what you'll happen. You'll get on a flight, you'll go here, you'll spend this time together, and all of that in front of cameras. Plus you're in a different country and you haven't slept and you've been filming and you've also only met this man about 10 times.
Yeah. And you're also
that. And then you're also, he's the only thing you thought about for months. So you're like weirdly obsessed with him in a way that you wouldn't be in a normal relationship when you had an outside world to go into.
I think there's also a real part of, as women get older, we're expected to be able to protect our hearts a little bit more. And the response from her reminded me of like that first heartbreak when you're a teenager. And I think that that's actually quite relatable. But you could see her trying to run down. She's like, I'm fine, don't help me. She's trying to run down those stairs. I thought she was going to blow over that. It was so windy up there. That
location, I know it looked beautiful.
No, it didn't. It looked terrifying.
I'm sure it looked beautiful when someone went and scouted it and took a photo at a car or stood there and like a guy stood there in his like windbreaker jacket, was like, this will be nice for the finale. Not thinking that woman gets to the car, she like gets blown over. She has to walk in her high heels up the top of this rock on those like rickety stairs, stand there with that man while he tells her that, I'm sure there's someone out there for you. It's just not me. And then he keeps saying, I'm sorry. And the best moment was when she says, well, if you stop saying it, because you're not. And then she turns away. And then instead of just having like a graceful exit, which she still did have, but it's like she's nearly getting blown sideways. She's having to sort of teeter down those rocky stairs. She's going back and forth and they're trying to put music over it and they're trying to cut to Bear's face into hers face to make it more cinematic. But it just really looked so awkward. And I was like, that is almost the worst thing you do to that woman, is like not give her like just an easy, dignified way to get out of there. It's to
and maybe
send her
like
teetering down a rock.
Can we cut away from that? Like, we don't need to see her about to fall down the stairs.
I know, but they had to make him look like this injured man because they have to like really beat the Bachelor down before they give him his happy ending. And then she broke down the car.
I know. I feel really bad for her. I mean, she said that she hasn't reached out since, but I can imagine you when your pride takes a hit like that, it's pretty hard. Yeah. But then I look at Sunny when Sunny was up there. She's a very sweet woman, but I also found that final scene really awkward. Oh. Only because I realise now why. Sunny said that she couldn't hear him properly because it was so windy, and she's a bit smaller than him. So if you, as tall girls, we understand this. If you're in a group of people and you're the only tall person, everyone else is eye level, you so often miss hearing things because you can't hear what everyone else is saying beneath you. I know that sounds really bad, but you know what I'm saying.
I get it.
But Sunny was saying, she goes, I didn't hear half of what he said, which is why I couldn't respond properly. That's why she looks a bit awkward. And she's like, the only thing I heard was love. And then I realised he'd picked me.
And he says love every 5 seconds. That could have been anything. And also, you don't want to have the worst thing you could have in that moment. And if this happened to me, I would throw myself off that rock to the penguins, is that if you thought he picked you and he didn't and you had that reaction. Yeah. So that's why I think so often those scenes where the woman who's picked gets told, it takes her a little while because
to understand.
Our biggest fear is like overreacting or looking like we've put ourselves in this situation. So, but it was a nice ending because Sunny was such a fan favorite from the beginning, and people loved her so much, and there was this like beautiful camaraderie with her and the other women in the house.
Apart from Kim.
Also, well, yeah, that was that whole situation. But overall, I think, and also with the fans, like people loved her from the first episode, where we sort of saw her get out of the car for the first time, and also just the significance of it that in all of the years of having The Bachelor in Australia and all the seasons and all the different iterations, we've never had a woman of Asian descent be even in the final few, but let alone be in the final two and then also win the entire thing. Like that is huge. And the outpouring of emotion on socials and people talking about it and people reposting about it was just like incredible. It almost like overtook the significance of just Bear and Sunny being together just because of who she is.
So Tina Provas, who's been on the show before, she actually posted this Insta story about why it was so significant. So let's just have a quick listen to that.
I'm like emotional. I just finished watching The Golden Bachelor and Sunny won, and I just did a little bit of tip-tapping research, and she's the first Asian person across either The Bachelor or The Bachelorette in Australia to win. And I feel like that says a lot because essentially I feel like in particular with a show like The Bachelor, it's a social experiment where one person will stand out and pick from a crowd of like 30 potential people. So if you're a man and you stand in front of, you've got a sea of blondies and there's usually only like a couple diverse women in the Bachelor cast. They don't often get picked. And I've noticed it time and time again in The Bachelor. And I know there's a couple of exceptions, but if you watch back, it's very blonde. Anyway, oh my God, I'm crying. What the hell? I always talk about how important diversity is from the perspective of a young woman and for kids growing up and seeing it on screens, and it's aspirational to see someone like you on a screen. But obviously with a show like Golden Bachelor, it's a different age demographic, and it just made me think that must be really nice for women who are a bit, men and women who are a bit older and later in life and wanting to know that they're like accepted and loved.
That's really sweet and a very genuine reaction. You know, the tears there, you know, Tina's saying, oh, I'm being so dramatic. But honestly, I think it's just unexpected for if you're used to seeing things play out a certain way, whether it's reality TV or whether it's, you know, on scripted, you are used to seeing the blonde girl win. Mm-hmm. And Tina says that because to see an Asian woman, a woman of Asian descent win is really special.
Yeah.
And also to see someone who was originally born in Korea, Sunny, and immigrate here, had a really tough life, and to see that is really, really impactful.
Yeah.
So I think that's really special as well.
Yeah, and I think that was obviously like a part of the story and a part of the show since it started, in a really positive way, like Tina's saying, of like all these different people watching that and seeing the significance of that, and especially in a time when reality TV in Australia, but also scripted drama is not very diverse and has not really gotten better in that way, and has kind of almost reverted back to having the same sort of blonde white people in every show. And even sometimes when people of different backgrounds get brought into these shows, they're often just there for a couple of episodes and they get like a bad edit, or they get like they're never seen as like the leading lady, or they don't get that twinkly music behind them when they arrive to show that they could be the wifey, like that kind of classic edit. So I think with Bear and Sunny, that's why people were so invested in their love story, and especially finding out just as the show finished that they were still together, because that's always the thing with The Bachelor, is that it's filmed so far in advance that often you watch this beautiful big finale and then a post pops up saying, hey, we're not together anymore because it's been 7 months. And that's
the better part of it. I mean, it's the better part of a year.
Yeah, and also the fact that you can't, like, you have to be in secret, so we know that they get to spend the night together after the finale. which the first time without camera is like wildest thing to happen after seeing this person only on camera very briefly a handful of times.
With not mic'd up.
Yeah, exactly. And then they get ripped apart, put on separate flights. Oftentimes, I don't know if it happened this time, but oftentimes the man gets to, or the bachelor or the bachelorette, whoever's the star, gets to fly fancy first class direct, and the other person has to go, different flights to kind of keep it under wraps.
Put them on the next day, on the same flight the next day.
I know, it's a whole thing. And then I think then they get like a certain number of secret visits together over time. But again, it has to be all very like clandestine, all very under the radar.
Yeah. So I'm saying they had to stay away from windows.
Yeah.
It's like they're
because the Bachelor's been spoiled before. They've done the long lens through the window a few times.
It's so creepy.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be very hard. It's a very difficult way to start a new relationship.
Yeah.
To start it by having to hide from everybody, not tell any of your loved ones. I'm sure the children knew, but it would be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
There has been a little bit of criticism. So Chloe Long, who's Sonny's daughter, she is quite big on TikTok and Insta, and she gave us the wonderful "Are you a feminist?" line in the home visits. She's such a vibe, Chloe. I love her. She's got a great energy. So she has called out Channel 9 for not moderating the racist comments on the videos about her mum. I feel like we should talk about this as well, because I think it's particularly coming from us, Mamma Mia, we publish a lot of content too. We have our own guidelines. But I'd actually love to hear from you. What do you think about the fact that Channel 9 haven't moderated those comments?
I think they have said they did step in once it was pointed out to them. But that's the thing. When on your own platforms, you were responsible for the comments, which I think a lot of people, just in the general public might not be aware of, which is why often when if you're reporting on an ongoing court case or something like that, a lot of publications will turn their comments off, and then you'll get comments pop up in other sections of people saying oh, you're censoring us, or you just want this and that. But it's because in Australia, the publication is not only liable for what they print, but they're liable for the comments section. And if someone says something defamatory, then they can be taken to court because they allowed it to be published. And so that's why I thought when this idea of people saying oh, they probably weren't checking the comments, I was like, there's no way for such a big company like that, they wouldn't be checking the comments. I just wonder if it adds to the drama. I don't want to put words into the mouth of the people who produce that show because I don't know. But I just wonder if there was something around them that's not. I think a lot of the time racism in Australia in particular just gets really overlooked of oh, that's just how it is, or it's not that upsetting, or just oh, but every woman on the show is getting critiqued. It's not just her, but there's a difference when it's racially charged to just not liking someone.
It's a very Australian thing to be oh, it's just a joke. And I think that's the type of racism that does happen in Australia. It's this flippant, oh, we're fine, we love everybody. You're right. No, it's just, because it's supposed to be funny, but it's actually really hurtful. And some of the comments on here are just reinforcing those stereotypes that Asian women have been tackling for a really long time. I don't want to speak to it because I'm not an Asian woman, but Tina, I'm sure would agree that the way that Asian women have been portrayed is not in that positive light. So I do think that Channel 9 do have a responsibility to moderate those comments.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I did see some commentary yesterday of people saying oh, just let it go, let them be in love. Why are we still talking about this? But you just can't. One, you can't let it go because it's still Sunny's reality. I'm sure today in all of the well wishes and people obsessing over her and loving her, there's also a lot of racially charged criticism coming her way, and it would be for any woman of Asian descent in the public eye, or anyone who just exists online and has to have those comments daily. You can't really turn it off and say I'm not going to talk about it when it's your daily reality. Yeah. And I think also especially with her daughters coming out and talking about it and being so eloquent in the way they've discussed it and bringing it up on the show and bringing it up on their socials, it's also that's a huge emotional burden for them, but they're doing it to help educate people and protect their mum, and hopefully maybe people who work on these shows will see that and change some of the behavior about how they moderate comments going forward potentially. Yeah,
I think so. Chloe definitely was sticking up for her mum, which was very sweet. I don't know if you saw the video that Sunny had posted on her Instagram maybe a week ago before it was announced that she'd won, and she's basically sobbing into the camera, talking about how happy she is to have all this support and how she's got all these new friends.
Yeah.
And it made me want to cry. It was so cute. She was like, I came to this country, I didn't have anyone, and now I have all these new friends. Not just my mansion girlfriends, but I have all these people writing and support. And she's sobbing. And I was like, I'm going to protect this woman with all like just look after her, because she's just such a guiding light, like so sweet. And it breaks my heart to think that there are people on there just making these what they think is funny, and it's not funny. It's just stereotypical racism. Don't do it to her. She's so sweet.
Yeah, and it's so interesting watching that outpouring of love for her, because it's that classic thing where like you have this woman with like so much personality and people love her, and by default that has made people like Bear more. Like, not that anyone disliked him, but he is very reserved, or at least he comes across that way on TV, like very reserved, a little bit bland, I would say, through the whole season.
Yeah.
But also, like, I don't know, maybe I feel like also they're so, because of the Golden Bachelor is meant to be more lovey-dovey, it's almost like they had to, I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but I wonder if they were trying to make him more kind of just neutral so that he wasn't offensive anyway, so people loved him and stuff. But it's interesting how his stock has really been upped with being with Sunny, because all of a sudden now people are like way more invested in him than they had been previously. Like, people loved him when the first episode aired because they were really invested in his story of like being a father to his sons and how close they were, and losing his wife and how he spoke about that and wanting to fall in love again. And he was like, you know, from what we saw on the show, like respectful and nice throughout the whole show pretty much. But I think towards the end, people were just like, they were more invested in the leading ladies than the leading man to an extent.
I think most successful relationships in my eyes have a extrovert and an introvert. And maybe Bear is just the more reserved one, and then Sunny's the fun one. Like, that's how good relationships work. You got to have balance.
It's funny how like at the end of some of these shows, sometimes you see like the star is like, oh, I just want to keep being on TV. Like, I don't want this to end. I want it. But I kind of get the vibe from Bear that he's like quite happy for the show to be over, and he's quite happy to like step out of the spotlight, which kind of makes him endearing. I don't know. The tricks
Still find
of
his
TV.
accent very hard to place. Like, I know
really?
he's Canadian, Australian.
Canadian.
I know he's Canadian, but it doesn't sound Canadian. It's an odd mix. I think maybe because he's been here for a long time.
Yeah.
But every time I hear him talk, I'm like, what
Maybe
is
he's
going
nervous
on?
being on TV, and now we'll hear him talk differently.
Maybe.
But anyway, those two crazy kids are together. I hope they make it work.
Yes.
But overall, I think like the first season of The Golden Bachelor in Australia has been like, I know there was some bumpiness with the ratings and stuff, but overall I feel like people have been very invested in it. And
I think it's Golden Bachelorette next.
Golden Bachelorette next, I think, will be the kicker. Like, that's what they need to do. Okay, so last week we talked about Kris Jenner's big star-studded 70th birthday bash.
Yes.
And, a bit of a bone to pick with the Kardashians and Meghan Markle, because after we had done our whole big debrief of the party, of who was there and all the glitz and glamour and all the celebrity guests and everything, the next day a bigger news story broke that we're only speaking about now because we have gathered all the information. And that is the fact that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, as we said at the time, attended the Baby to Baby Gala to honour their friend, Serena Williams, who was one of the chairs of that event. And then they party hopped across town, as many celebs did, to Kris Jenner's 70th birthday party, leading me to some questions and some intrigue about what time these events were.
Yes.
But that turned out, my debate about the timing of the party turned out not to be the most interesting thing about the night, if you can believe it, because the next day, the Kardashians, who are all big Instagram grid posters, like Instagram is their platform of choice through and through, particularly Kris Jenner and Kim Kardashian, who both posted pics of the party. And in their carousels, they both included photos of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, but more so Meghan Markle very much. Front and center, posing for photos, laughing on the dance floor. She looked gorgeous, looked like she was having the time of her life in this room of every single famous person. It was like being at the Oscars. Every single famous person was there. And so that was like a little bit headline making, but not really anything to give a second look. Until the next day, when all the photos of Meghan and Harry mysteriously disappeared from all these grid posts, leading to an outpouring of speculation of what had happened behind the scenes.
Meghan and Harry, in fact, asked the Kardashians to remove the images from the carousel posts.
Yeah, well, that's what we think happened. So obviously no one has spoken about it. Meghan and Harry would never comment on this. The Kardashians might comment on it in a behind-the-scenes clip from the Kardashians where they'll kind of discuss it neutrally for the cameras. But the way they film, we're about 2 years out from that. So until then, we don't have a definitive answer. So all we know is that they disappeared from their grids. And it wouldn't have been because the Kardashians will post a photo with anyone. Like their cachet doesn't go up and down. Like the more fame, the better on their end. So there's no way Kris Jenner or Kim Kardashian would have deleted those photos. So it does make sense that the call came from Meghan and Harry. But then it kind of begged the question as to why, because they were at the event, they were photographed going in. And then only recently it's come out that through People magazine, which is Meghan and Harry's often publication of choice, where they give interviews to them or they just have their team comment to them as a source, but because people verify it, we know it's them. And I guess that's because they've had a bit of a shaky ground with publications in the past. They've had really shaky ground with like Vanity Fair, with Vogue, even with some of the other trade publications. So People magazine is like Harry and Meghan's safe publication. And so the story that People ran, which we can assume is directly from Meghan Markle's camp, was that there were waivers available at the party to sign, and you could tick the I want my photos published box or not. And apparently Meghan and Harry are saying that they ticked no. And so the photos being posted is a violation. Whereas now sources have come from the Kardashian camp that say there were no photo release forms circulated at the party. It wasn't that type of an event.
Yeah, but what we also know about this party is that everybody had their phones taken off them when they came into the party because they wanted to protect everyone's privacy. Because as you said, it was the Oscars. Like every single famous person was there. So the speculation is that Harry and Meghan wanted those photos removed because it was Remembrance Day, obviously, on the Sunday, and they didn't want to upset the royal family and wanted to sort of try to get the relationship back with King Charles and the rest of the royal family. So the speculation is that Kim has then said that she's really pissed off with Meghan about this. She said that, you know, they were more than happy to be photographed at the Baby to Baby gala, but now they're not happy to be photographed at Kris's 70th birthday. The interesting thing about this, I think, is that Kris and Kim are so used to being the most famous person in a room. And I feel like this whole room, Kris's 70th birthday, was so full of A-listers. And then Meghan's like sort of trying to show a bit of power towards Kim and say, you know, you need to take them down because we're too famous for this. And Kim's pissed off because she doesn't want to have to do that because she's usually the boss. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, to an extent. I think the Kardashians would just be annoyed that it kind of paints them in a slightly bad light to look like someone didn't want to be in their photos. And then that story it was such a kind of a goodwill for that family to have all these famous people, you know, like Beyonce and Jay-Z were there. They go to nothing. Like, you know, and they were all like the amount of people in that room who were like the kind of old school Hollywood stars. And it was kind of this thing of that, like for so long, the Kardashians were like the new money in town. Like they were a reality family. The kind of real A-list stars, Hollywood didn't want to interact with them in any way. And now you've got like, you know, Kim's co-stars from All's Fair, you know, Naomi Watts and Sarah Paulson, who are like critically acclaimed actresses. Again, you've got Beyonce there, you've got Snoop Dogg, you've got all these kind of like, you know, these really old kind of guard of celebrities, not just reality stars who were there. So it was like this idea that they were like accepted into Hollywood, not just accepted, but the power players. And then to have the storyline be that Meghan Markle didn't want to be in a photo with them, I'm sure that they wouldn't love. And just having kind of any negative press that they didn't engineer. I wonder with the form, if people are saying there's a photo form and there's a back and forth over that, I would say it would be the filming form that like
for Kardashian.
Yeah,
I heard that there wasn't any crew there for keeping up.
Well, they often,
not keeping up, just the Kardashians.
The Kardashians, yeah. So often with the Kardashians at those events, yeah, they don't have a full film crew there. But what they do is because they're all filming on their own phones, and then they often take that footage. Sometimes they'll turn it into an entire special. So like Kim and Kanye's wedding there was no camera crew there. It's all just filmed on people's phones, but they still had to get everyone to sign the release because they still made it into an episode. The same with Kourtney and Travis's wedding and with a lot lot of their Christmas parties. They don't have an official crew there, but they still have so much footage. And the thing is, you have to get people to sign the release forms on the day, even if you just want to use it as a little background. Like they might have just had like a little scene flash up when they were talking about the party. So normally if you go to any kind of filming thing, any kind of event in Hollywood where the person involved is in a reality show, you always have to sign a waiver on the way in just in case you're shown in the background.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that was the filming waiver to be on the Kardashians potentially is what they decided not to sign, and then that kind of bled over into the photos on Instagram, which would have been a separate form.
The reason that they're more upset about the images from the 70th birthday rather than the baby to baby, I think that's a pretty clear distinction.
Yeah.
Like baby to baby is a charity and this is a 70th birthday party, which is everyone just having fun.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason for the charity, you know?
This is where I don't think there's any kind of bad blood between, and it's kind of come out that it's between Meghan Markle and Kim Kardashian, the two most famous names that have become the two names in this. I don't think it's that there's any kind of personal bad blood between them. Like from the photos, it looked like they were really close. It's more so that their brands just don't mesh. As we were saying last week, like a lot of the issues with and why Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were getting so much backlash is that the pictures of them spruiking like their new Netflix show or like added all these big A-lister Hollywood events came at the same time as there were photos of Prince William and Kate Middleton, being very dutiful and serviceful at these Remembrance Day events and doing these kind of public meet and greets with general people. And then William gave an interview about what it was like to sort of support Kate through her cancer diagnosis and how they told their kids. So you have these
quite jarring.
Yeah, you have these really two very different narratives around these two famous royal couples running at the same time. And then again, like, Meghan Markle, her whole brand, like standing next to Serena Williams at the Baby to Baby, which is a charity for women and children who don't have money, and like it's a huge thing that a lot of Hollywood women get involved in. That's very on brand for her. But being at a party for the Kardashians hosted by Jeff Bezos is kind of off brand from what she's trying to put out into the world.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, Meghan Markle's brand is more wholesome. It's that early 2000s Pinterest board, everything is curated, and I'm in a perfect white sweater making cake, and it's really, really curated. Whereas I think Kim Kardashian is a lot more edgy. She's happier to push the boundaries. I mean, you just have to look at the marketing for Skims to see that. We've got the merkin underwear, we've got the nipple bra, which we've spoken about, but yeah, they really do clash quite heavily, and I don't imagine Kim would have been particularly happy being told what to do by someone else.
Yeah, I don't
think it's bad blood. I just think that there would be a bit of like, excuse me?
Yeah, like it's like now you've made the story about this where we could have just kind of swept past it. I just think that the Meghan Markle and Kim Kardashian, their brands don't mesh because Meghan Markle's in this really, like, to be honest, like quite difficult position where she obviously wants to be like a media darling. Like she wants to have a lifestyle brand. She wants to be on TV. She wants to be in the kind of upper echelons of Hollywood, and she wants that to be her brand. But because of how she has sort of platformed herself as this humanitarian and this person who, is here, and she always says like, I'm just here for the greater good. I'm not here to run a business. I'm here to help people. Because of that, it puts her in such an awkward position whenever she goes to a Hollywood event, whenever she makes a product, she always has to fall back on like her tagline is like, it's not about me, it's about the people I'm serving. And that is what all the criticism around her comes back to, is that she's put herself in an impossible position of wanting to be a famous business owner and be a star and be a celebrity, which is fair enough. Like that's what she was before she met Prince Harry. So it's fair enough that she would want to continue in that line of work that she had always been in. But now because she's put this kind of charity exterior around it, it just makes people question everything she does. Whereas weirdly, Kim Kardashian has a very, very honest brand, whether you like her or not, because she was like, I really wanted to be famous. I worked so hard to be famous. I care about being famous so much. I care about getting headlines. I want people to talk about me. I want to make money. I want my business to be successful. And because of that, she's got these little side layers of like doing prison reform and giving to charity and stuff. But her bottom line is always like, I want to be famous and make money, which weirdly has made people a lot more accepting of her over Meghan Markle, if that makes sense.
Because she's honest.
Well, she's presented
she's being
herself
honest
in a
about it.
certain way.
She's being honest about it rather than portraying, because it feels fake. It feels forced. I think that's what a lot of people see with Meghan Markle. A lot of the criticism is it's forced, it's fake, there is no authenticity there. And authenticity is the thing that people love the most on socials, you know. And I mean, I can't say that Kim is essentially very authentic all the time, but she's happy to sort of be honest about why she wants things.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, Kim Kardashian's, like, I know a lot of people say her superpower is how she looks, and it's definitely how she looks, but I just think that her superpower is more that how willing she is to put herself out there. Like, we've, talked before about how on the Kardashians, she is the most famous one in that family, and she puts the most on camera. She's filmed herself this week sobbing because she didn't pass the bar exam, even though, like, her initial post she put up was like, I play a lawyer on TV and I'm not one now, and I'm disappointed, but we keep going. And then to, like, show a photo of herself crying and being like, essentially, like, I failed again, and these are the reasons. And also this week, her saying that the worst executive producers of reality television in the whole world are Kris Jenner and Kourtney Kardashian, because they want to cut. She says they always want to cut all the moments where the family's fighting or having disagreements. And Kim Kardashian said that she pushes to keep those really personal, but also just, like, kind of almost grotesque moments of her and Kourtney as two grown women screaming at each other and slapping each other across the face. That paints them in a terrible light. Like, it really does a disservice to their brand. But Kim Kardashian is so, like, brand and fame focused that she's like, I'd rather kind of, like, be a bit humiliated on TV if it means that we're putting out a product that more people will watch.
Yeah.
Whereas
she's very
Meghan
smart.
Markle is, like, so curated, because she has to be. Because, she knows how much Kim is so uncurated and Meghan Markle is overly curated. So when you mix their brands together in such a public way, like, I feel like something like this, like a photo being taken down, was just destined to happen.
I think once it gets to that point, they should have just left it. Once the horse is bolted, it's too late to try and put the jack in the box. I just mixed two metaphors there, but anyway.
I picked up what you were saying. Yeah, it's almost like if someone had said to Meghan Markle, like, it's going to draw way more attention. But maybe also because it was a carousel of photos and there were so many photos in there, maybe it's crazy to think this, but maybe they didn't think people would notice because there were so many photos from that party going out.
Yeah, I just don't think it's that. If it's in there, it's in a full carousel. Sure, you didn't want it initially, but it would have blown over if they hadn't tried to, like, take it all down, because this is just extended.
But there was also the thing of, like, were they, like, not wearing, like, Meghan Markle, people saying she was not wearing a poppy and she should have been wearing this, and there was all these different layers. So I understand in the moment, especially if you're Meghan Markle and you're so used to having, like, again, we were saying she's parted ways with publications and stylists and people in her team and things because they haven't protected her or, like, put her into the world in the way she wanted. So I think that's, like, the kind of one unforgivable thing in their world is, like, if you put their brand out in a way that they don't like, that's kind of the one thing with Meghan and Harry that they can't move past.